Austin Brooks is a fearless advocate for developing the potential of the next generation. Austin leads the Midland Institute for Entrepreneurship team. A decade ago, he was the kid who inspired the Creating Entrepreneurial Opportunities movement, or as you may know it, CEO. Encouraging young people to see the value of their home communities while creating space for the next generation to be a catalyst for continued improvement matters deeply to Austin. He now lives in his hometown of Effingham with his wife and daughters. Please give a warm welcome to Austin Brooks, who will introduce his panelists.
All right, can you all hear me? All right, there we go. Well, good afternoon. I'm so excited to be here with you today. At Midland Institute, one thing we believe is it takes a community to raise a workforce. Any of you looking for workforce? I'm just out of curiosity, anybody looking for good workers these days? Yeah, I do a lot of these talks, and it's a pretty common theme, just so you know. Everyone's looking for a workforce right now. But we also believe it takes a community to install and instill that entrepreneurial mindset. And so one thing that I'm super excited to talk to you about today is just what we've been able to see in the last 11 years as a nonprofit. So I work for Midland Institute for Entrepreneurship, and we're a nonprofit that supports the expansion. Also, we support the existing programs, these CEO programs. And so we have the pleasure of getting to teach high school kids how to run and operate their own business while also immersing them in their local communities. And so one thing that I'd love to do today, before we tell you more about what we've learned in 11 years of our pursuit of installing these learning environments all over the country, I'd love to learn a little bit about what you think about this current workforce. So there are cards on your table. Hopefully you have a pen. If not, I threw a few extra pens out there for you. But I want to start by asking the question, and please write on this card, what is your current view? What is your view of this the future workforce? These younger generations, so the millennials, Gen Z, what's your view of the future workforce? No wrong answer. And the one thing I ask with this question that you write down first is please be honest. And I really want to know your truthful take on what your view is of the future workforce. Awesome. I see many of you writing. I see a few of you have stopped. The second question I really want to ask is, what are the biggest growth points or areas of improvement you see the Gen Z and millennial future workforce needing? What's the biggest growth point or just areas of improvement that you would like to see in this future workforce? Again, no wrong answer. I'm just asking for honesty. All right, thanks to all of you who are writing. But I want to shift gears briefly. So we can talk about, the workforce that's in school now, the workforce that's coming up through the ranks through college and maybe even starting to work for some of your co-ops and companies. But one thing I want to reflect on, I think this is always a valuable thing that we do when we travel around and spend time with audiences like yourself. But I want to go back, I want to take a trip down memory lane. If you think back to your time in high school, I'm curious, what were you known for in high school? So this could be the clubs, the sports, the activities you participated in, but what were you known for in high school? This should be easier. This one, but I want you to write on that card, third spot on there, is write. And my final question is, I'm curious, as a high school student, as you're going down memory lane, is who had an influence on you outside of your family? Who had an influence on you as a high school 16, 17, 18-year-old student outside of your family? So as we wrap this activity, I do just kind of want to ask the group, because you guys, spend time crossing paths, you know everyone professionally, but let's survey the room real quick. Where are my past athletes at? This is probably not something you all talk about too much. All right, we got some past athletes. Do we have any drama, people who were in plays or musicals? All right, we've got a few. Do we have any, where are my nerds at? The tech geeks, the early computer adopters. We got some nerds out there. I'm in this category. How about bookworms? You got anybody who loved to read? Oh, wow, I got to figure out what this group is. Only about 10 of you have raised your hands. All right, do we have any math geeks out there? Numbers. All right. Here's one of my favorite. Any straight A students out there? Where are my straight A students at? All right, where are my C's get degrees? All right, I was hoping that would be the room. And if with that group, any groups I missed that you were known for something in high school? Maybe it was the sports you played. Maybe where are my farm kids at? That was the top of my list. Hey, there it is. Last question. I can't help but ask this: how many of you had a job in high school? All right, there you go. Well, thanks for that information. As we jump into this presentation, I think we kind of will come back to some of that thinking. But I got a question. So we, again, Midland Institute is the organization we work for, but the CEO program, because we work in education, we've got an acronym, and CEO stands for Creating Entrepreneurial Opportunities. And I'm curious, just by a show of hand, how many of you have heard of the CEO program? I'm just trying to, okay. So I'd say 3/4 of the room. If your co-op invests in your local CEO program, do you mind standing up real quick? This is after lunch. I'm going to make you work. If you invest in your local CEO program, will you stand up real quick? Awesome. Everybody give them a hand. Thank you. I noticed you like the standing and sitting during lunch, so I'm like, I'll participate in that. But what I want to jump into today, so for those of you who've heard of CEO, for maybe some of you who haven't, there's an origin story with CEO. Many of you who've launched the program years ago, you might have heard about the kid who sparked the CEO movement. And so I wanted to tell you a little bit more about that story as we've grown, because a few metrics here. This started in Effingham County. This is where my wife and I live. And some of you may remember back when even this was just 1 or 5 classes in just the state of Illinois. But what's super exciting just about the growth that we've seen is it hasn't just stayed in Illinois. So we do have 44 of our 58 programs in 7 states in Illinois, but we now have 58 programs in 7 states. And of those, that's about 300 high schools that we serve, and we teach this high school entrepreneurship course to really install the entrepreneurial mindset at a high school level. But in 2005, in the origin story that I'd love for you guys to know is this kid wanted to meet this guy because he wrote this book. Now, my wife says I show this picture of myself as proof that I had hair. That's mostly true. But this gentleman is a guy by the name of Jack Schultz. And so for me as a high school kid, he had written a book. A lot of the adults in my life knew him or had a story about him. He was a Harvard business grad, serial entrepreneur. He was on this stage 7 to 8 years ago. I don't know if were any of you here when Jack Schultz was on the Boomtown tour and spoke a little bit about this book? Okay, I see a few hands in the back. But as a high school kid, I was troubled that all these adults in my life knew him, but I wanted to interact with this brilliant business mind myself. So I asked a question to a guy by the name of Craig Limbaugh. He was my high school teacher at the time. I said, I want to meet Mr. Schultz. And what he told me that changed my life, what Craig told me, he said, Austin, you can meet whoever you'd like, but you have to set up the meeting. And Jack's a busy person, so it might take a little while to get the meeting, but it's on you to set up the meeting. And so what was so interesting from that first interaction is I realized I had the permission to connect. High school kids, even though that was 15 years ago, even the high school kids today, they need that permission to connect. And so Craig gave it to me. And what's so interesting is, I knew he wrote a book, but I didn't know a lot about his business. So the fact that I asked him for 30 minutes and he gave me an hour, I was like, wow, this community leader, this business owner cares about me enough to spend 60 minutes. And it was eye-opening. So I got back to school the next day, and my 2 educators at the time, Joe Father and Craig Limbaugh, they sat me down and they said, hey, Austin, you met with Jack. How was it? And I said, he actually knows a thing or two about business. And they're like, yeah, Austin, he's pretty savvy. But the thing that they did that was so smart is they called Jack and they said, hey, you met with Austin. How was it? And what Jack said, he goes, as a business owner, as a leader of an organization, I am so disconnected from what's happening at a high school level in the lives of these young people. And he goes, it was real eye-opening for me. And what makes me so proud about the story is just how these men way wiser than me, Craig and Jack, they built this learning environment in our small little town of Effingham County. And I am so proud to see how it's expanded, because now thousands and thousands of students have went through this program and had an experience similar to me where they've got to spend time with community leaders while also building an actual business. So Craig Limbaugh, founder or the architect of CEO, he was my high school teacher, but he became the first CEO facilitator. And then he also became the first executive director of Midland Institute. So anyone in this room know Craig, just out of curiosity? If you heard him speak, pretty impressive guy. But 2015, he got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer and told he had 3 months to live. Now, he was a stubborn guy and lived 4 years past his diagnosis and kept mentoring all of us. But really, his legacy is kind of that, it's the CEO learning environment, which it's never in a classroom, it's always in a business. So as you hear a little bit more about CEO today and how we really see the brain drain being countered in rural America, I just wanted to let you know this is the mentor or the person who had an influence on my life when I was a high school kid. So next up, I want to introduce you. I talked about that facilitator role that we have with the CEO learning environment. This is a year-long class that's actually counts as high school credit. It's the coolest business course none of us got to take. Well, let me check. Anybody in here take CEO? Just want to make sure I'm not making that assumption. I saw a few of your scholars. I'm like, I know some of those names. So congrats on those scholarships, by the way. That's a big deal. But Craig was the first facilitator, but today I've got a treat for you. I've brought Dr. Ryan Follis. He was a facilitator of Montgomery County CEO for 6 years. And so I'm going to turn it over to Ryan, and he can tell you a little bit more about what he's seen in the life of these high school students.
Thanks, Austin.
Yeah.
So, I am Dr. Ryan Follis. Sometimes people go, what's your doctorate in? And I say, well, if you're in a restaurant and somebody starts choking and they say, is there a doctor in the house? I can run over and I can pray over them. That's about what happens. Now, if I pray over them the Baptist way and a miracle happens, then everybody, it's great, no big deal. If the miracle doesn't happen and they start writhing all over the place, we just pretend we're charismatic and we just keep at it. Something will eventually happen. I'm a doctorate of ministry because I have a foot in passion and ministry, but when CEO came out, I wanted to jump in with that because as many people asked about spiritual crisis, the next thing they asked about was economic crisis. I need a job. I can't provide for my family. I don't have a working vehicle. I can't get to work. CEO was so compelling because as a facilitator for 6 years, I participated in these young, great minds. You can look at the studies. There is no smarter generation than this generation. The stats don't lie. They have more technology, more information available to them than ever before. But what they lack is implementation. That's the brain drain. They go to school and they have a deductive learning style. I'll give you a simple illustration that I use as a cheat. It clips my tie to my shirt. Everybody probably knows what one of these things are, right? It's be a paper clip. Now, if I asked you from basic deduction skills, a paper clip, thus the purpose is in the name, is used for what? To clip paper. I asked my students an inductive or a divergence test, if you will. And that really made them struggle at first. They're like, I like 2 + 2, it equals 4. But then I said, how many ways can you use a paper clip? And you have 1 minute to come up with as many ways as possible, and I'll give you a $10 iTunes card. And believe it or not, half of them early in CEO would stare at me like, it's a paper clip. You use it for a paper clip. But some of you may have been in the shoes that I was wearing at a time or two. You have a toddler in the bathroom who's locked you out. You have a paper clip. You all know that before your wife finds out that the water coming out from underneath could also be a drowning effect to that child, you're going to take a paper clip and turn it into a, that's right, it's going to be a lock pick lock. Of course, then you might have also been that younger sibling who, annoyed by your older brother, had a paper clip and a rubber band. And you said, I can butterfly this bad boy and I can stick in the back of his neck, and when he goes and cries to mom, I will get 1 minute of satisfaction before she comes back to me. That's CEO. CEO is finding ingenuity. It is making the brain not simply be about learn it and then do it, but be lifelong learners, because in our world today it changes overnight. I invited students to participate in CEO. We'd go to the schools, we'd say, hey, you should really consider this program. They'd come down with interest, they'd sign up for it, and then they'd come into the class. Now, if you've ever been to high school, the way students participate in any event in high school is they dare you to impress them. And of course, in the big auditorium, they all sit and they sort of position themselves with their tribes. If you've seen this before, and they have their elbows and their face and posture towards their friends, but they're intentionally putting off people. In high school, it's survival. right? It's who do I know and how can we know each other? If you ask them a question they don't want to answer, maybe somebody will blurt out something to just disrupt and maybe get some giggles from their friends, maybe some jeers from people in the other tribes. We get them interested in CEO. We say, this is unlike anything you've ever experienced before. On the first day of class, this is the best example I can give you as a facilitator about the experience that the students, as I call them, team members, would share. They come into CEO, and I would model what CEO and professionalism would be about, and I'd shake their hand, and I'd say, welcome to CEO, and they'd come in and they'd sit down. And even as they were professionally dressed, even as they looked professional, when I walked back in after all of them had come into the room, they were still sitting down, posturing as tribes. I had 4 high schools that funneled into our program, and they'd find a way to sit next to each other, and they'd whisper and talk, sort of nervous, not sure what's going on, but we don't know those other people. And then when I got to the front of the classroom, that's the mistake we make. They treated me like a teacher. They slouched. They dared me to impress them. We had our first speaker. I didn't really prime them. I didn't set them up for anything. I just allowed this to be a learning experience from the start to beginning, from the beginning to end. Roseanne comes walking in the door and she says, hi, everybody. And they all slouch in the chairs, say nothing. I stop Roseanne mid-tracks and I say, Roseanne, can you do that again? She looks at me curiously. She says, you want me to come back in again? I said, yeah, that'd be great. I don't think we understand what is going on here. Roseanne walks out. She comes back in. The kids, of course, sitting up now. They've got their notebook. They got their pen, hand on the notebook. They know with the speaker they're going to take notes. They're going to learn something. And yet she walks to the front of the class. And I say, we still don't have it, Roseanne. She walks back out. Finally, the kids are really nervous. They don't like to be in trouble. So when she comes back in, one daring gopher sticks his head up out of the gopher hole. He stands straight up, but he still doesn't know what to do. So he looks at me, he looks at Roseanne, he looks at me, Roseanne looks at me, looks at him, and it's just a staring contest until finally I said, Roseanne, I still don't think we have it. Can you go back out? And the gopher goes back in the hole. Roseanne walks back in. All the gophers stand up. They all poke their heads out. They know at least that's something they're doing right. To which Roseanne walks in, and I said, hold on. She stands in the back of the room, and one daring gopher leaves the gopher hole and goes over and says, hi, welcome to CEO. They learned what I modeled as they came in. We're not in a class, and this is not a teacher. This is facilitating your experience with professionals. Let's behave like professionals. Of course, all the other gophers figured out what was going on, and poof, they all made a blood clot over to Roseanne. That little gal that she was had to sort of find her way through, and every speaker since, they stood up. They learned professionalism, learned small talk, learned how to engage, how to interact. It wasn't just IQ, it was EQ. It was about self-awareness. It was about socialization. That's what we do in the real world, isn't it? You don't care how much you know if you can't figure out how to relate to other people. I'll give you one story. By the end of the program, a couple of years ago, a young man, very shy, didn't know how to interact with people. I said, hey, you go in and lead this group into this business. And he went in and he went and stood in the corner, and they all followed him like a herd. And the people who they were supposed to be engaging with stood in the corner. And I said, what are they doing? They said, well, I think they're playing with the Facebook numbers, because every time they liked the page of that business, they had a little clock that changed with the numbers. I said, how about we talk to them? Fast forward a couple of years later, because of his experience, he had so much pride in his CEO that he learned how to shake hands and introduce people. He received a full-ride scholarship from a university because he gave them each his business card and told them about the business he started as CEO. He radically sped up his education, graduated in 2 years. He wanted to get education out of the way because he wanted to do something that was more than just a paperclip. Yeah, he used things that most of us know like a paperclip. He used Amazon. We all shop Amazon. But he turned it into something special. He turned it into a retail arbitrage. He has a little device, and when he goes to different Kohl's stores, he scans things, and it tells him how much he can actually make on Amazon from that app. He goes to 7 different states, finds all the Kohl's stores, scans all of those different items. He interacts with all of the managers, the people that are in the Kohl's store. He interacts with UPS, local post office. He interacts with the local business and the Chamber of Commerce. He found a building to rent. He has a whole lineup of things of which he packages, bubble wrap, boxes, tape. This year, as a 20-year-old, He is projected to gross $250,000 on his Amazon store alone. Now, I know he only gets like 25% of that. You do the math. Would you like to make that when you were 20 years old? It's not just a paperclip, is it? That's one of the coolest parts about CEO. And if your program, your schools don't have it, your communities don't have it, ask more questions. It truly is life-changing. Another story that was changed we'd like to share with you is Michael Brummer. He was one of those students of Craig's in 2010. And he has a unique story of his own we'd like to share with you now.
The exchange was a way to bring people, forward thinkers, creators together. I had purchased this old building, and it used to be a bank, so it was the exchange of money and goods, and now hopefully it can be the exchange of great ideas and community. My name is Michael Brummer. I was an Effingham CEO student from 2009 to 2010. The one thing that I've always remembered and took with me from CEO is how much the community cares, how much they're willing to invest in the students in the class, and how much they're willing to give to the students of themselves and help them out, and the relationships that you build with those community members. I think I always knew I wanted to move back to Effingham, and so how could I do that in a meaningful and impactful way? What could I take from things that I had seen in the city and bring back here and help improve the community and the life here? And I saw that, and I've seen that done well in larger markets. When I go visit co-working spaces and you see these creative people lifting each other up and growing together and challenging each other and collaborating. And that's what we see the exchange being today. I wonder, as a community, where's our future going to come from? Who's the next generation of people that are looking to push forward and continue us moving in the right direction? And I'm hoping to help foster that here.
Hello, I'm Chris Eggleston. I'm the community engagement guy with Midland Institute. That's why I didn't get an introduction like Austin gave to Ryan, because I'm the guy who gets to go out and introduce myself to folks all the time. I'm the first point of contact of Midland Institute. If someone says, hey, we want to know a little bit more about starting a CEO program, I'm the one they talk to. I actually live in Southern Illinois. Austin and I argue about this all the time. He identifies Effingham as Southern Illinois, and I go, where are you from, Chicago? Because I'm in the real Southern Illinois. I live in Carterville. Where's the Egyptian Electric Co-op people? My co-op for 21 years, right there. So that's where I'm actually from. But I fell in love with the CEO program, visiting programs around there, getting to visit the kids, seeing the impact in the program as a guest speaker for several programs. And it made me fall in love with the program so much. I didn't buy the company like the Razor guy, but I did join the team to try to help spread CEO to more communities. And big part of CEO, you're hearing about the results that Ryan was explaining, what the students are getting out of there, how they're transformed into those real problem solvers, and seeing that they have to look for solutions to these problems. All that stuff they're learning in school and learning programs, they have to be able to apply it. But you're hearing great results, but what happens? Do you want those students that you're impacting in your communities through your education system, through programs like CEO and other programs you have going on, do you want them to get all of that, get prepared to go out in the real world and take that success and all those skill sets somewhere else, or do you want them to stay with you? And the key part of CEO that I believe separates from any other entrepreneurship program out there is the immersion part of CEO. CEO is designed to immerse those students in your local communities. And there are a number of ways that happen. First off, CEO, while it is an extension of the school day, the students do get high school credit towards graduation with a CEO program. It's a class in the sense that it meets 5 days a week, 90 minutes a day. That's where it looks like academics. But after that, it doesn't look like school, feel like school, or smell like school to the students or to the folks in the community. Number one rule, the class never meets in a school or in a classroom. It always meets in a business. Typically, they're quarterly home sites. I bet some of you in this room may have served as your business may have served as a quarterly home site where the students will go, and that's where they'll meet when they don't go on one of 30 to 50 business visits they go on in the course of the year. Again, the idea is to get them out of the school, get them out into your businesses to see what exists locally. All the great business opportunities are right there in their backyard. So many times, kids and even adults will miss all the great opportunity right there. You know, as a kid, I always knew where the pizza place was and where the Dairy Queen was. If this coat wasn't hiding my belly, you could see I still know where the pizza place is and the Dairy Queen is. Okay? But there's other businesses folks drive by every single day, and you have no idea what's in that business. You might find out there's a multi-million-dollar international business right there, but because they don't sell anything locally, most people locally, unless they work there, don't know it's there. And that's what happens in a lot of communities. They just don't know your businesses. So part of CEO, always meet in a business somewhere. And they go out on these business visits. And on the business visits, they get to learn about the business itself. But more importantly, they're starting to learn about business from the people who are applying business concepts every day to be successful. So on every visit, they're going to learn a handful of business concepts. And that's how they start learning business, because the real teacher of the class, Ryan was kind of demonstrating, as a facilitator, he's trying to get the students to learn from the business visits, to see what they're learning. So that's what was happening. They go out and they learn the business concepts from you because you're using it. They're not from a textbook. The other part of this that's really valuable, and I think in many cases the students like this the best, they get to hear your stories. The beginning of all this, Austin said, go back to your high school years. Well, they want to hear your journey from being a high school kid and how you got to where you are in life. They want to know how you got from where they are right now to where you are in life. What made you be successful? They want and need to hear those success principles. They need to hear what they have to do to have a great career, a great life, great business. The next thing that happens in CEO is there's also 30 to 40 guest speakers come into the class to speak. The reason they have to come in, oftentimes they're business owners, but they don't have a place to host the class, so they actually come to one of those quarterly host sites to come and visit with the class. Again, they share about their business, they share business concepts, and they share their life success story. During this process, business visits and guest speakers, these students are developing a local professional network of 75 to 100 or more people, and Ryan corrected me the other day, said it's more like 300 folks that these students encounter during the course of a year. And they're meeting all of those different people. Imagine 90 minutes spending with a high-quality person in your community, spending with you. What impact could you make on someone just in that 90-minute class while they're seeing your business? So that's part of that immersion as well. And out of that, in your community, every single CO student is also matched with a professional business mentor. And many kids have had mentors. Okay, it may have been a parent or other family member, may have been a teacher, may have been a coach. But this is probably the first time they've ever entered into a business mentorship relationship. How many of you have ever had a mentor in your life? A lot of you have. Did you have mentors when you were in high school? Many of you did. Did you have business mentors in high school? Oh, a couple did. Fantastic. That you don't often see that, so that's fantastic that a couple of you did have that. So that's the design of this. Get them in a different mindset by having that mentorship relationship. So by having that network, getting immersed in the community, they really start to learn what it takes to be successful in life. And that's a big part of what CEO does and brings to every single community. Now, get back to our slides here. Couple things that we learn. We do pre- and post-impact surveys of every single CEO class. And these are results we share with the local community so they can see the impact of their program. We did find out in a recent survey that when we asked students, did you become a customer of a business that you visited or heard from during the course of the year? 63% said yes, they did. And that's pretty amazing, especially if you consider there are a lot of businesses those students visit that they can't become a customer of. Like a manufacturer, they may not buy directly from that manufacturer. So that number actually would be higher of people they could buy from. Another amazing stat is technology is great when it works. Come on, come on. Okay, I can tell you the stat. I know it. The next amazing part of this is the idea that the students, when asked, do you ever talk about the business that you go on? 80% of those students said yes. We tell family and friends about the business. Think of referrals. If you're in business, this is really powerful. Family, friends they can connect with. And the third one that's a big question, and this is really powerful, all the employers, is do you see yourself working for a business that you encountered during CEO? And the answer, 60% of them said yes. I see myself working for that person, working with that person, or working for that business. And that, talk about workforce development, that's a big part of CEO. We'll go see what we got next. I'm always surprised. Oh, yes. Next up, How many Morgan Scott area folks? I know where was it Ken? Right over here. Had lunch with Ken today. They're involved with Morgan Scott, one of 3 programs, right? You're involved with? Well, this young lady right here is Abby Lashmet. Now, Abby was a Morgan Scott CO alum in 2015, so she went through the program. She's told me, she said, my plan after high school was to go off to college, which she did. She went to University of Illinois, so she moved away from home to do that. She said, after that, I plan to graduate, and I moved to a big city and start my career. Well, the story changed a little bit. Because of CEO, she met a lot of great people. Before graduation from college, she was home, and she encountered one of the bankers in town that she had met through CEO, and that banker likewise got to know her. And he said, you know what, we're taking a lot of applications right now for employees, you should go apply. She said, okay, I'll go check it out. She said, I had no intention of taking a job. I just wanted out of courtesy and for the person asking me, I went ahead and applied. Next thing you know, they give her an offer for a job that was not actually one they had. It was as marketing and customer experience coordinator at Farmers State Bank. So Abby's an example of someone who stayed home or came back after college in part because of CEO. Here's her story.
Wanting to get things done and being a determined, ambitious woman, I think a lot of that I can contribute to growing up on my family's farm and having to do that every single day. My name is Abby Lashmet, and I'm the Marketing and Client Experience Coordinator at Farmers State Bank. So I feel like there's a ton of skill sets that I learned from CEO that I carry on into my career. The first one that comes to my mind would be my soft skills. So knowing how to shake someone's hand, knowing how to present yourself in a professional manner, and really making sure that you can communicate internally with a team. And it wasn't until my senior year of college that I came back and really realized that you can be successful anywhere. And with all of my experiences that I've had, I thought it would be so great to be able to come back to an area I actually care about and be able to put those experiences and that knowledge that I gained and those skill sets to good use here. You don't have to start your own business to be an entrepreneur. You can be an entrepreneur in the company you're working for. And I feel like a lot of the entrepreneurial mindset is what you can have in your position too. Just having the ambition and that go-getter mentality, I feel like that's not something you have to do to own your own business, but you can also have it in your role or in your career and be an entrepreneur in the company you're working for too. You can be successful wherever you are, and the biggest thing that you weren't expecting to be great in your life, it can really turn into that.
So congrats to the Illinois Electric Co-op. You guys built quite a few programs in your footprint, and those are the outcomes that make us so excited. And so, we're here today talking about countering the brain drain. And I just want to be clear, obviously, we're all biased. If you haven't figured out, we love CEO, right? But CEO is only one part of your entrepreneurial ecosystem. There's a lot of things that you can do to counter the brain drain. But hopefully, I really just want to point out the themes from today that you can take away, regardless if you want, you have a program, maybe you have a program in your community and you're disengaged and you want to get engaged, we'd be happy to help there. If you want to launch a program, Chris is phenomenal at serving communities to get this off the ground. But if you're really looking at, how's this going to move the needle in my community? I want to share a new kind of market study that I did on my own home community. And what's so interesting here, so Effingham was the first community that launched CEO. So Midland Institute was founded in 2010. It was founded because CEO started in 2008 in Effingham County. The problem Effingham County faced is everyone started knocking on the door saying, what is that learning environment? So ultimately, Midland Institute was formed as a nonprofit to take care of all the people asking about it, right? And we've got better every year that we've done it. But I want to point out from the first 3 classes, where are they now? And there's just a couple stats here. 50% of the first 61 students, 31 have remained in, Central, as Chris is telling me, / Southern Illinois, land of Norris Electric. 47%, 29 of these 61 live in Effingham County. How about that on a return for investment? If I was a betting man, at most I would have said 25%. But then finally, students that are running their own business right now, we've got 10 students running brick and mortars that they've started, not necessarily their CEO business, but business they've built, like Michael Brummer from the Exchange. He bought a downtown building. How cool is it to see students 10 years out of this program coming back and putting their money into buying downtown buildings? So I'm just going to share a couple stories, because obviously Abby's a rock star. Obviously Michael is a phenomenal student, but there's so many students that go through all of these programs. So this was the very first class, a graduating class of 2009. 2 reasons I want to point this out. One is my lovely wife I married up in the world. She was in the very first CEO class, and she is a project manager for a company in Effingham called Heartland Dental. Also, Tyler Yoakum, the guy who designed this presentation, he has a side hustle, a freelance design business called the Real Good Design Co. He is a business owner. I want to point out the second class. There's a young man by the name of Christo Schultz. He's in wealth management at Midland States Bank. And then Alyssa Long Robinson, she works for the city of Effingham. So they might not all buy downtown buildings, but they might have jobs that are really moving the needle in your community. Michael Brummer, who we talked about, was in the 3rd ever CEO class. And so he's obviously built the Exchange, but in high school, he's the guy that had the hot dog stand, Effingham's first food truck. And he sold hot dogs for years, but eventually selling hot dogs was not what he wanted to be when he grew up, as a food truck guy. Now, he loves food trucks. He was just serving hot dogs downtown with the grand opening, or with the open house of the Exchange. But he has really got into the shared workspace and cultivating and developing downtown spaces and spaces that matter. And then finally, he was in the 3rd class. There's a young lady by the name of Alexis Teichmiller, and she actually works with all of our alumni in a series we call Fearless Founders, where Midland Institute can book high-level guests, Times bestsellers, to speak to all the classes nationwide, and Alexis is the host of that series as well with her own Deeper Life podcast. She's had a clothing boutique. She was an affiliate manager for a multi-million-dollar company. She is an amazing young lady. So I just want to point out, these are the 62 faces, but 29 have returned. And so, the question we were asking is, are students ready to own tomorrow? And what my mentor says, and this quote has a lot of power, it's amazing what young people can accomplish if you let them own their own work, own their own behavior, and be responsible for what they do. That sums up the whole year-long learning environment. Even though they're going to immerse themselves in their community, if they are late, it's on them. They have to learn to be on time. We want them to become world-class communicators. We want them to learn the soft skills that are going to help them thrive when they either work for your business or start their own. But the real thing that I just want to close with here today, your theme of envisioning tomorrow, I was so excited when I heard that was your theme, because it's super encouraging to hear that you guys are thinking about the vision for the future and what you're doing in your own communities. And I know quite a few of you in this room, you guys do so much, and you're very busy folks. So I just want to compliment you on being community-minded. But I want to leave you guys with a challenge. And our friendly challenges today, envisioning tomorrow, it starts with you. And so just like, Jack took an hour of his day to meet with me as a high school kid, regardless if you do CEO or not, I just want to challenge all of you is, who can you connect with at a high school level? And all I'm asking, just do one meeting. Is there a high schooler that's maybe in your sphere of influence, a niece or a nephew, or, maybe someone that you have a natural connection with, but maybe who's just one student you can meet with? Maybe if you're a little bit more ambitious, maybe go speak to a high school class or engage with a high school principal or superintendent and say, is there any way I could help? But if you really want to envision tomorrow, my challenge is it starts with you. And my challenge is, regardless if you do CEO or not, is maybe, even after a first meeting, maybe there's even someone that you could mentor. Maybe it's not a high school student, but you have a career's worth of knowledge and expertise. And I find, traveling this country, working with amazing people all over the place, that there's 2 types of successful people. There's those that have knowledge and they take it to the grave, and then there's those that are willing to share it with others. And so that's really where we just want to encourage and thank you for being community-minded folks, but also to leave that additional challenges. If you want to counter the brain drain, unless people know that they're cared for, I love what Chris was saying. Students, if they don't have a network, they're going to build it somewhere else. And so that principle that we teach high school students of your network is your net worth, you are in their network. And so if you want to counter the brain drain, I just compliments to all the work you're already doing. I mean, the scholarships, if you looked at us eating lunch with all of you, we all had goofy smiles on our face, and we were probably clapping the loudest, because that's moving the needle. So congrats to that scholarship program. Congrats to all the stuff that you do for your co-op. But I just want to say thank you for the invitation to spend time with you today. If any of you have interest in learning more about CEO, we'll hang out a little bit afterwards. But yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for what you're doing. And we really believe that at high school level, this is when students decide to stay or go. I do think high school kids today, they see opportunity everywhere else except right in front of their face. And so if some of you who have a CEO program want to get better connected, feel free to talk to us afterwards. We're happy to, kind of reconnect you with what's happening in your backyard. But thanks again for the invite. I know it was mentioned if any of you have questions, we are, well, right on time. So do you want me to take a question or two, or should we wrap? Okay. Any questions for the group? They asked me to kind of open it up. If there was something we didn't cover today that you were hoping to hear a little bit more about, we can take 2 questions. Or if anyone has a story out of their program that maybe we need to know about, you can brag on your students. Yes.
We're asking co-ops to participate, but how does what are your partners in this? Is it the school, sponsoring business, Chamber of Commerce? Who's your partner in setting up a class?
Yeah, it's quick answer, it's all of the above. We take a steering committee, and with every chapter we build, it's a chapter model, more or less a franchise model. We build a local board because just, CEO in the true Southern Illinois may be different than CEO in Central Illinois, and that's okay. So every community is a little different. We just want to make sure it's tried and true, so that's why we stay a partner to the process. But the folks that get behind it, co-ops are a big part. I mean, Ed Van Hoos, anybody know that name? He just called us up the other day, hey, I live in Ohio now. You want to launch a program out here? Our first Ohio program in Tiffin was because someone from the co-op world. So co-ops have been a big part of this. Community foundations, Chamber of Commerce. So yeah, it's a slew of individuals that want to get behind these outcomes in the lives of juniors and seniors in high school. Great question. One more over here. And I'm sorry we can't get to all of them. Like I said, we'll hang out if you have more questions. There are a lot of, outside of our program, I'll just say there's a lot of jobs right now, and I was talking to 3 of our alumni the other day. He's like, I don't know what to pick. They all pay they're paying better than they used to, but he chose to work at Walmart because he liked fulfilling all the orders for the online orders. So I do see high school students are hungry to work. But how they find jobs, that is one thing I think all communities need to work on, and I think we are hoping to help with that a little bit, because if they don't go through CEO, the soft skills, they're extraordinary with these devices at doing this. That's why what we're really teaching them is how to do this and have, these things pick up, they actually make a call, and that's scary. So, I mean, if you don't text your job applications, how are they going to find you? So quick answer, there's a lot of great jobs, and you all live in great areas. I think there's a lot of good young people that are hungry to work, but they got to start somewhere. So I think we see a lot of them jumping into jobs in our community, for sure, in our communities.
Just real quick.
Yes.
His name escapes me, but I know the gentleman that started the Dippin' Dots franchise is from Grand Chain, Illinois. Could you poll the group or the audience to see any other companies, nationally known companies that's got their start in Illinois?
That's Kurt Jones. He's been very active at Southern Illinois University, so I've met him a couple times. Impressive gentleman who he created, if you don't know the story of Dippin' Dots, it's real entrepreneurial. I mean, he created it messing around with the science stuff, nitrogen, how to freeze stuff, and now they have a coffee version now, I believe. I'm trying to think of another great example. Well, I'll tell you what, it's a new one that you don't know nationally necessarily, well, probably not most of this audience. A young man by the name of Adam Walters, Edwardsville CEO. Adam graduates in 2019. He's a typical geek kid. He was somebody raised your hand when you asked if you're a geek. He was a geek kid, loved to play video games. He'd be the pale, skinny kid, always wanted to play video games. And he got in CEO. First thing it helped him do is be able to communicate better, as Austin mentioned a moment ago. But the other thing he learned, he could take his passion for video games, turn it into a business. So what he did is he created his own game and his own video game. He worked with developers around the country, so he's having to communicate with other people, build a team of contractors, essentially, to help him build this game. By his trade show, after he launched the game, he had reached $50,000 in revenue. He's gone over 6 figures in revenue. with that. I don't know where it stands right now. I don't know if Austin's heard from Adam lately. He has new ideas in the hopper he won't even share with us, and he's actually going to college now to learn how to do what he already did. So that's a quick story, a fresh news story. We get to hear these stories all the time, but that one maybe I don't know if you play video games, sir, but yeah. if you have a child or grandchild, maybe maybe they do.
Yeah. So just a closing thought on that. It's awesome to see the big wins, the big success stories like, Adam. But what we're really talking about here, we're using entrepreneurship as being a lever for teaching lifelong learning. And ultimately, what my challenge for all of you is, how do you develop more invested citizens? And our expertise from 11 years of doing this at the Institute is spending time with you. And thanks again for being here today. We're going to wrap up so we can turn over to the next portion, but it was a pleasure spending time with you. Thank you.
Thanks all.